tell coaches who I am and who I'm not to begin with. What I'm not is a football coach. And so everything I'm going to share with you when we go through these sessions is going to be not from a football coach's perspective. What I am is a data guy. So I've been in business for 16 years with a company I created that does a lot of work in the aerospace and defense world. So a lot of my clients, the people we work with, are places like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, NASA, the Missile Defense Agency, places like that. So my niche in that world that we've built over years and years of working out there is we help those guys make sense of large volumes of data. So they have lots and lots of information. We field applications for those guys that help them very quickly understand it. In a weird winding course that's led me here to a conversation with you guys in the football world, several years ago, we ran into film breakdown data from a Division II school out in Arkansas. This was probably 2014 or so. Now, I'm a football fan. I've always liked football. I have an appreciation for football, though, like I said, I've never coached or been any kind of player or anything like that at all. But when we saw film data, it fits so well with what we do for our other clients. And we started fielding some applications for football teams several seasons ago. And so, and really where it kind of the roots that we had in this, we had always heard about football coaches breaking down film, and certainly you guys live and die by that. You know all about film. Great. Hopefully you guys are all hearing me okay still. We had a little spin through there. Hopefully you guys are all good. When we saw film data, we realized what coaches are doing. You guys are watching film, you're breaking down film, you're entering lots and lots of information every week. You're creating a database full of information. And football is a very unique strategic game. There's a whole lot that could be done with that film data. So several years ago, we started fielding applications for teams. We've worked from everybody from high schools up through professional teams in Canada, Michigan, USC, Arizona, FBS schools, and everybody in between. We've done things with it. What we do at this time of year, when we get into, Coach Out, good question. You're free to record this if you want to. We record these as well, and we'll post them also if you want to go back and view them later. So we'll make these available to you as well. What we do this time of year, when we hit the off season and we start heading into this spring time frame, we shift our attention towards more of an educational role in this sense. There's a lot of things that football coaches can do with data. You sit on top of a lot of just amazingly great information that you can do a lot of things with, but there are some data disciplines and some things about data that if you use them right, if you know how to use them right, you can get so much more out of your film data than you're probably getting now. And so these sessions are intended to help coaches see film data from a data person's perspective and consider a few things that are probably important for them. We should be all back now. Sorry, guys. This occasionally we'll spin through this and do this. Just be patient with that if it happens. I usually see it on this end. What we're going to talk about are these topics here today. We're going to get into how you can use your film data as a very powerful diagnostic tool. And we're going to talk about something that's called data visualization, which is it's kind of an industry buzzword, but we're going to show you how you can do some things visually with data that help you very quickly understand a complete story that's buried in data that otherwise is very hard to get to. Before we head there, we're going to talk just about a couple quick things that if we get a few minutes to talk with football coaches, I always like to kind of underscore just a couple big things with them that if they can hold on to can, again, start to change the power that they see with their film data. Let's start by talking about what we've seen as the three primary purposes for film data. We believe that anything you're doing, when you're breaking down film, I get guys all the time asking me, hey, what should we put in our breakdown? What have you seen that guy do? What's a good idea to have in film data? It's always kind of a hard question to answer because it really is unique to each coach and the way they want to approach things. But what we've seen is there's kind of three primary purposes for doing it. And each of those purposes is going to have some unique implications for what you should be doing in your data. Those three purposes that we've seen, for the most part, with the clients we work with, are, first of all, a diagnostic purpose. And what we mean by that is the way your film data is set up and the things you do with your film data should serve as a very powerful diagnostic tool for you. Your data should be able to tell you not only where something is broken or where something's not working right. Not just that, but it should show you what you need to do to fix it. So it should have a very corrective purpose to you. And we're going to talk a little bit here in a few minutes about what you need to think about when you do film data to help you be able to get there. A lot of coaches have enough data in there to know that they got a problem. But many times, a lot of coaches don't have enough data in there to tell them how to fix it. And so we're going to look at that. And we're going to spend the bulk of our time when we start talking about this data visualization stuff and how you can use a few tools that can very quickly show you you're broken right there. If you want to fix it, here's the fix. Okay, so we're going to show you that here. We're going to get there in just a second with all that. A second big purpose, second primary purpose for film data is the predictive purpose. And I think this is where most coaches, if you ask most coaches, hey, why are you breaking down film? Why are you spending time to do all this? Most of the answers would be a predictive type of answer. Most coaches are doing it because they want to know, what is a guy going to do in a certain situation? Can I detect it? Can I anticipate it? Can I know it with enough confidence I can do something about it? We have a session that Wednesday. We have a session that's going to focus very much on that predictive purpose. We're only going to touch on it here briefly today. On Wednesday, we get into this in a very unique way that shows you how you can flush out literally hundreds and hundreds of high probability tendencies that are in your data that you probably aren't seeing at all. So a predictive purpose is the second primary purpose of what you're doing. And then lastly is a decision support purpose. This is probably the one area that I think is maybe the biggest deficiency for most football coaches out there, and it's the biggest missed opportunity with film data. Your film data shouldn't just tell you what's going to happen. Your film data should have enough in there, it can tell you the exact answer, the answer to the how question we always say. It should answer very specifically for you, how should I attack this defense in this situation? How should I defend this offense in this situation? It should take you right to the very doorstep of saying, here's the best thing to do in this situation. Now, there's some unique things you have to do to allow it to do that for you. We spend a bunch of time with that in the session we do on Friday that gets into this in a lot more detail. But those are the three primary purposes for breaking down film. It's either diagnostic, predictive, or to tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Today, we're going to spend a bunch of time on the diagnostic piece of it. Now, before we blaze into all this data visualization stuff and all these things, this is the other big thing we share with coaches when we get an opportunity. And I think that these 4 points, when we think about film data, these are probably the most 4 important things I could tell a coach when you ask me, what do you think about breaking down film? What should I include? What should I not include? Again, based on our last several years of experience, these 4 considerations are probably the 4 most important things I can tell you. And in a second, we're going to pop into a set of film data and kind of show you what these look like. But the first of these, I would say, the first thing a coach needs to be thinking about, especially we're going to talk a lot about being able to diagnose an offense or defense and see where it's broken and how to fix it. But before you can really do that with any kind of effectiveness, you have to first decompose your offensive or defensive systems into as much detail as you possibly can. Now, that's probably a fairly intuitive statement, but it's an issue where sometimes we see shortcomings with coaches in terms of what they're breaking down. And this is a good time of year to be thinking about this, okay? Because you're probably getting ready for spring ball if you're a college coach. You're probably still chewing on what happened last year if you're a high school coach. But there's kind of this window of opportunity where we think about what we're doing right now. When we talk about decomposing your offensive or defensive system, the key is if you want to find out where something's broken, you want to be able to see as much detail as you can because the devil's always in the detail. And the degree to which you decompose your system is the degree to which you're going to find where something's broken and not working. Now, I'm going to step out of world football for a minute. I mentioned to you, my background is aerospace and defense stuff. A lot of NASA work. I would use the example of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster that happened back in the 80s. You probably all heard of it. Space Shuttle launched and blew up on launch. Now, terrible. It set the space program back forever. I'll tell you, the guys at NASA, they still talk about it all the time, and they're paranoid about it all the time because they can't have another one of those things happen. When that happened, the rocket went up. There was a small flame that was kicking out of one of the side boosters on that thing that burned a hole in the big tank, and it all blew up. Obviously, when that happened, they had to get to the root cause of why that happened. That system has literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of parts in it. But because they knew details on the entire system and how that thing's engineered, they were pretty quickly able to hone into, okay, it's over here somewhere, and we saw a flame coming out of here. Here's the parts in that section. And ultimately, they were able to get down to what really happened. And in that case, it was one O-ring. That was a big O-ring, but it was an O-ring that didn't seal right because of the temperature and everything blew. But I use that as an example because in the same way, your offense or your defense is a system with a bunch of moving parts and pieces in it. When things aren't working right, there's a reason why. But if you're going to detect the reason why, you need to have enough insight into the details around it. So we encourage coaches this time of year to decompose your system. Your play caller, offensive or defensive play caller, you should hop on a whiteboard and think about, here's a play call. When we make a play call, here's what we call it, and here are all the different pieces that comprise that. There's a personnel group. There's a formation. Maybe there's a back set. Maybe a strong right or strong left. We use motion. You have all these different pieces that go into what that call looks like. I'm a defensive play caller, so I'm looking at, I got a front. I have stunts. I have ways I disguise a coverage. I have actual coverages. I have all these different things. Everything that comprises that play call, you should flush out. To the maximum extent possible, that's what should be in your breakdown. Because if that's in your breakdown, you'll be able to detect where the problem is happening. And we'll see that a lot. A lot of coaches will see, hey, man, we're struggling on 3rd and short. And maybe we got 3rd and short, and maybe we can see a formation problem. But if we don't go any deeper than that, we may never know that the problem is only when we're strong left and only when we use this motion. So decomposing fully is incredibly important. Now, other two big things. And the second and third bullets kind of go together. And here's how I would sum these two up. We see coaches that sometimes aren't quite there that can do a whole lot more very powerful things if they do this. When you break down film, either a self-scout or an opponent scout set of breakdown, you should include information about both sides of the ball in your breakdown. We see a lot of one-dimensional, one-directional breakdowns. Okay? So if I'm an offensive coordinator scouting an opposing defense, a lot of times all we'll see in there is what the opposing defense was doing. We'll see front, stunt, coverage, blitz. What we don't see, in many cases, is what were those offenses doing against that defense. So putting information about both sides of the ball into a breakdown is hugely powerful because then I can start to understand, okay, I know I may be able to predict what coverage he's going to be in, but I'd like to see what types of plays or what personnel groups or what play concepts will run against him that he couldn't handle. Because I want to see what he doesn't like. If I only see what he does, I'm leaving myself basically half the story. So looking at including both sides of the ball. So if I'm doing a self-scout, I'm going to include, hey, here's information about my offense, and here's what defenses we're doing. I'm a defensive coordinator. Here's my defense. Here's what the offense was doing against me. Putting both in is incredibly important, okay, and opens up a world of information that you probably may not be seeing right now. I'm going to mention this last one. I'm going to bring up a set of film data so we can walk through this. The next big thing, and this would be the other key point that we encourage guys to do, is where possible, consolidate data into groups, aggregate data into different categories and groups. We'll talk about why that is here in a second, but what that lets you do, in effect, it increases, it's a way of increasing sample size in your data without having to break down more data. I'll explain it in 1 second. Let me bring up an example. This is some, you should be seeing an Excel file here. So when we work with our guys, really, not to make this a commercial on who we are and what we do per se, but the clients we work with, they break down film. I don't break down any film. Like I said, I'm not a coach. I wouldn't trust myself to break down film. I wouldn't know what I'm looking at half the time, to be totally honest with you. So the guys that we work with, they all break down film. When they do, they just dump their data out of their film system into an Excel file. This is an example. This is I think it's probably an FCS school from like a year or so ago. They had some self-scout data, I think, I think it was defensive self-scout in this case. So they broke down film, they dumped it into an Excel file, they sent it to us. Okay? So you're seeing some things there that probably look somewhat familiar to you. It seems like down and distance. gain, hash, play tree, formation, personnel, backfield. There's all this different stuff they broke down in their data. Now, just to give you a quick example, this is a defensive self-scout. Okay, so this is a defensive coordinator looking at himself. So we would encourage him, again, to be thinking about, decomposing his system as much as he possibly can. Now, in his case here, he doesn't have a whole lot of things broken down on himself. He's got, you'll see these categories here. He's got a front, blitz, coverage. Now, what that means is that if he's looking for problems or where he's struggling or where there might be something broken defensively for him, he's going to be limited, his understanding is going to be limited to only these three factors: front, blitz, and coverage. So if he sees that, hey, we're struggling in a certain situation, he's only going to be able to tell if it's because of the front, the blitz, or the coverage. There may be far more things that he could include in there. Okay, it could be linebacker depth. It could be stunt. It could be pressure direction. It could be number of people rushed. You name it. There could be more things he could put in there that would give him more dimensions to detect a problem. So right now, he could probably decompose this further, but he's got some of his own information in there. Second and third big thing we said is, hey, include both sides of the ball when you do a breakdown. So here he is looking at himself. This is the self-scout. And as he looks at his self-scout here, he's got what you'd expect to see, defensive information about his own defense. But he's also got information about what the opponent was doing in this case. So not just looking at his defense, but here he's got offensive plays that will run against them. He's got something called the play tree. He's got formation. See it right here. He's got formation, tree, personnel, backfield, formation, motion. He's got a bunch of information about what the offenses were doing against him. So he didn't just look at himself in a situation. He said, here's what I'm doing. Here's what the opponents were doing against me. Okay? So both sides of the ball in the data breakdown. And then lastly, we talk about categorizing data into groups. Okay? I'll just give you a quick example of where this is done here and how important this can be for you. Take a look at, I'm just going to do a quick thing with his data. I'm just going to filter his data real quick. Look here where he's got formations over here. So this is a perfect example. Formations are by their nature, they tend to be very specific, right? We have specific call-outs for certain types of formations. The challenge of being very specific with data is that the more specific you are, the fewer times things actually show up in the data. So with being specific comes a small number of times that something happens. If we want to get patterns and general things about data, we need to see things happen more often. So as a quick example here, let's say he's got a specific formation in here called panther trips. So in his data, there's several times panther trips show up, but he categorizes panther trips as a 3x1 formation over here. Okay, let me just do one more example here. We'll go even more specific. He's got panther trips bunch. So in his data, panther trips bunch is only in there 5 times. Okay, which means it may be hard to pick up things about panther trips bunch because it's only in there 5 times. But he categorizes it as a 3x1. So even though he's got specifics, he's got a broader category above that called 3x1. So he's only got 5 panther trips bunch. But if you look at all his 3x1s, he's got 69, 70 3x1s. So by categorizing things, you'll see here in the next few days when we look at some of the other things we talk about, is that you may not ever be able to pick up on a tendency related to that specific item because it's not in there enough. But it's next level higher, 3x1, there's 70 things we can probably pick up a ton of stuff about the category. So categorizing data allows you to find tendencies and trends at a higher level than you would miss if you were just looking at specifics. Okay. All right. So back to the presentation here for a second. We're going to start moving in towards diagnostics. But the point of all this is to help you guys understand that as you start breaking down film, 3 purposes: diagnostic, predictive, decision support. And if you will start to think about the disciplines of saying, okay, I'm going to include both sides of the ball in my breakdowns, I'm going to decompose my systems as much as I can, and I'm going to try and consolidate things into groups. If you do that, you're going to have the foundations of doing some amazing stuff that we'll show you. Let's talk for a second about this concept. We're going to shift towards diagnostics for a minute. Let's talk about this concept called data visualization. I'm just going to introduce this real quick. It's a buzzword. Admittedly, it's an industry buzzword. I'm usually not a big fan of buzzwords, but it's kind of it's what we do. Data visualization is a very simple concept. All data visualization is about, as the name implies, it's about basically creating pictures around data. It's about making a visual representation of raw data. Okay? Now the power of doing that is the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words. I have a bunch of raw data. There's a story to be told in this raw data, but for me to find it is hard. Sometimes, and film system reporting is really powerful and great, but you can kick out a film system report that might be 10, 50 pages deep of charts and tables and things. But to get a real story, an integrated story to understand what's really going on in my data, it's tough. You still have to piece a story together. Data visualization lets you create an image, an interactive picture that lets me understand data visually. Okay? It helps you move faster, understand better, deeper, quicker, all the above. Now, to do it, the principles, as the name kind of implies, you have to take visual pieces and attach meaning to them. If you think about things visually, we're able to pick up on things like color and size and shape. Those are visual things that we pick up on. What you do is you attach meaning to those in data. So color can mean something. If your data says that something's bad, we probably make it red. If the data says it's good, we make it like green. We can do size to say a lot of things happen. Or we can attach meaning to visual elements. Okay. Now, we're going to step totally outside the world of football just to give you an example. We're going to step right back into it. Let me give you a quick example. I'm going to bring up, I don't do any work with the federal government. Well, I work with NASA, but that's not really the federal, well, it is the federal government, but it's not like a government agency, so to speak, like I'm going to show you here. This is an example of a report. This is FEMA. I don't do any work with FEMA. FEMA is that organization that does emergency response stuff, right? FEMA kicks out monthly reports about what they're doing, how much money it costs, and what they're engaged in, all that kind of stuff. FEMA kicks out reports that look like this. You see it on the screen. It's this big report with a note from a guy and pages full of numbers and tables and charts, and here's what they do. Now, for the average person like you and me who doesn't do anything with FEMA, we probably look at a report like that and say, I'm not sure I can do much with that. I don't quite know what to do with it. A data visualization allows you to take raw data like this and make a picture of it that almost anybody can understand. So if I can take raw data like this in a report, I can create a visualization that looks something like this, that takes that same data but presents it in a graphical picture format. So in the same way, I can plot it by county across the United States, and I can use color and say, hey, where you see red, that's where they spent the most money, and green's where they didn't spend as much money. And I can use size and things like that to indicate what the most common occurrences were. There were more severe storm incidents than anything else, and they spent most of their money on hurricanes. I can graphically represent a bunch of data that's stuck down in that report. I can very quickly get information and say, I just want to know how much they spent in Florida in these years. I can just go boom, 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 and I can immediately start to find out information about how much money was spent in Florida for FEMA obligations very quickly with a data visualization. The whole point of me showing you this is just to say large sets of data that can be complicated, have stories in them that are hard to digest in a report, are easier to digest when we're interacting with a tool that makes it visual for us. Now, back to the world of football, what we can do in the same thing, in the same world of football, is we can take film system reports that are full of scouting data and film data, and we can create visuals around those that in the same way could very quickly tell you what's going on with a team, where a team is successful, unsuccessful, broken, working, not working, all the above. So I'm going to bring some of these up, and we're going to walk through them and show you how this works and what you're able to do diagnostically with data visualization tools attached to your film data. Now, as we bring them up, I mentioned to you a minute ago, the key to making a data visualization is to attach meaning to visual pieces. Okay? So things like color have meaning, size has meaning, those types of things. What we do when we work with film data is we attach, they're all really about size and color telling a story. From a color standpoint, we attach color to something called offensive efficiency. Now, many of you guys probably have something like this in your breakdown. We use a pretty standard one where you can grade a play based on down, distance, and gain as either a good play or a bad play. Our default setting, we use many different settings that different coaches have articulated to us, but our default is, on first down, if you gain 4 yards or more, we usually say that's a good play. If you gain less than 4, usually not. On second down, if you get more than half of what's left to go, it's good. Less than half is not. Third or fourth down, get what's left to go is good. Otherwise, it's not. So in film data, we can look at things like down distance gain and automatically say whether a play is a thumbs up or a thumbs down play. Now, you guys may do that in your film breakdowns. We'll see that with some guys. They'll have a setting in there that says efficient play. And a lot of times they'll tag it as yes or no. What we do is we tag those numerically. So we'll either say a good play is a 1 and a bad play is a 0. When you do that, because it's numeric, you can aggregate those and you can get an average of how efficient an offense is. So in a second here, you're going to see all this scouting data. You can see these colors. We use color to attach to offensive success, offensive efficiency. So you're going to see in a minute if teams are very inefficient, not very good, the scale starts at a deep dark red. The team's bad on offense is going to be red. If they're very good, it becomes deep dark blue. You're going to see things like size telling a story. So size and color get attached to your film data to create a story. So let me give you a quick example as we dive into one, keeping in mind again that the source for this, it's all about taking this same raw data that you see here, just what you've done, you've broken down film. There's a story that wants to be told in your data. A dashboard of visualization brings it to life. Let me give you an example of one. We're going to start with an offensive self-scout. So just to orient you what you're looking at here, this is actually from Penn State from a couple of seasons ago. I think this is an early season self-scout dashboard for Penn State's offense. They'd played 3 games. So I think they had a bye week in week 4. So first 3 games, they had dumped all their data. We packaged it into a dashboard. Here's how you use that. You see in the upper left, you see the football field with a bunch of dots on it. Every one of those dots is one of the plays in their breakdown. I mentioned we use size and color to tell a story. So a big dot on the screen means a big gain. A little dot means a little gain. A blue dot is a pass. A gray dot is a running play. So we can see, run-ins and passes, and it doesn't. When I share my screen, it doesn't pop up a window. But if you have one of these on your computer, it pops up a window, it tells you all the data behind each play. So you have a kind of a scatter plot of where all their plays have been in that breakdown. And right now, we're looking at 221 offensive plays from Penn State. Now, the other things that you have in your breakdown, they broke down things like personnel, formation, all these other different things. Each one of those other categories that you break down gets packaged into what we call a data grid here. So all the personnel groups that are listed in the breakdown get packaged in this section. The way you interpret what you see, again, is all size and color. So in a given section, the biggest box indicates the strongest tendency. So the bigger the box is, that means that's what they do the most of. So as an example, take offensive formation here. Double is the biggest box. That just means that they were in doubles more than any other formation. Penn State was in their first 3 games. There's a really small box down here called tight. Because it's small, it just means that they weren't in tight very much. So visually, from the size aspect, we can tell what they do or don't like to do in a given situation. Okay. And then lastly, color tells you offensive efficiency. So again, we look at gain, loss, down, distance, and evaluate every play as either good or bad. When an offense is averaging 20% or less, meaning 1 in 5 of their plays is any good, then that's the start of the color scale, deep, dark red. It gradually goes from red to yellow to green to blue. Once they become like 70% efficient and above, it's deep, dark blue. There's this gradual temperature scale almost between them, where I can start to get a relative sense of where a team is good or not good. So by size, I see what a team likes to do or not do. By color, I see if they're any good or not. So if I'm an offensive coordinator looking at this data and I want to do a self-scout, I want to diagnose things about myself. First, I want to make sure I've decomposed as much as I can. And in this case, they get personnel, formation. They have something called a formation adjustment, offensive scheme, offensive play, motions, routes. They have what fronts and coverages they saw. So if an offensive coordinator was to diagnose himself, I was encouraging an offensive coordinator doing a self-scout is looking for red boxes. Because red boxes mean those are things that are not working for them, where their offense is performing poorly. So to give you a quick example, if you look over here in the offensive scheme section, their second biggest box in the offensive scheme is something called F. I don't even know what F is, to be honest with you. They call it F. It's what comes through into this dashboard. But their second most common offensive scheme is red, which means it's bad, right? So if their offensive coordinator sitting there looking at his self-scout after 3 games and sees a red F there, he's thinking, man, I either need to stop calling that scheme or I gotta fix it, because it's a prominent part of my offense and it's terrible right now. Now, if I want to diagnose that, a dashboard is all interactive, so I can start to go somewhere in my data if I want to very quickly. So all he would have to do is come over here and click on this F. Now, he does that. You'll see here in a second, the dashboard updates around that selection. So by selecting F, right, he said, hey, I got a problem over here. This scheme's not performing well. He selects it. Everything updates around that. So now what we're looking at in the dashboard is only his F scheme offensive play. Okay? Now, he might be tempted to say, I'm doing terrible with this scheme. He might be tempted to say, let's throw it out. I'm going to throw it overboard, chuck it, it's not working. But it is your second most common offensive scheme. It's a significant part of what you're trying to do. It's just not working. But by selecting that, he can start to see some things diagnostically, because he also can see formation, personnel adjustments, all these other things. Let's look at a couple of things here. Look at his formations, if you will, for a second. So F in total stinks, not working. Okay? But when I look at the formation, when he ran it from doubles off or bunch formations, you see these 2 blue boxes right there, he was really good. So F in total has been bad, but it hasn't been bad from double off, and it hasn't been bad from bunch. So I'm either going to do a couple of things. A, when I roll into my next game, I'm either going to run it from these looks because that's where I'm good, or I'm going to go back and I'm going to practice it from doubles and trips and figure out why in the world can we not run this game from these looks. Okay. Look at the formation adjustment. When his formation adjustment is to the right, he's really good. In other cases, it's not. Here are specific play calls. The blue ones are ones that worked from that look. The red ones are ones that haven't. So very quickly, because it's visual, you can start to see a story that's buried down in data that otherwise is hard to see. And you have to do basically some forensic science on data and with reports to make sense of it and make it all come together and make sense. I tell guys all the time, my daughter, she's not as little as she used to be now, but little 12-year-old daughter, she could hold her own and she could have a meaningful conversation with James Franklin about his offense in this case. Not because she doesn't have any clue about football, she doesn't. But she would tell you that, hey, your F scheme's not working. Okay? And she would tell you, and she would look at it and say you should run it from doubles off or bunch. Just because you can see it. Your data wants to scream a story to you. The key is, can you attach visual meaning to it so that it hits you in the face and isn't something you have to hunt and search for. Okay? So with the dashboard, you can go anywhere you want to go. If they wanted to explore what's our best offensive plays in the red zone, let's say, they can take where you see a field position slider here. They can slide this over to the 80-yard line, wherever they want to go. Look from the 20-yard line come in. And by just doing that, everything updates around just that look. So here's our offensive performance in the red zone. Okay? Our best personnel look is this 0-23. We stink from 11 personnel in here, and we're not very good from 12 either. We're just not very good in the red zone. Okay? If I'm looking at my best schemes, here's my best schemes. GPG, inside zone read, F scheme again, terrible. But I can start to see that just that fast. So this is the power, the diagnostic power of being able to see, okay, here's where we're broken, here's where we're not broken, here's where things are working or not working. Here I am in the red zone, here's 12 personnel in the red zone. So if I want to look at that in total, I'm not performing great, but here are the places where I am performing well. When I'm in bunch, unbalanced, or doubles, I'm fine. Any other place, I'm not. Okay, I get that next level to see what needs to be fixed, where the problems really are. Now, I'll just to do it justice here, let me show you a couple other examples here. Here's a defensive self-scout. This is from SMU, one of our clients in the American Conference. So this is, here he is, he's looking at, boy, this is almost an entire season's worth of stuff. See these opponents in here? Here's games against Tulsa, Cincinnati, North Texas, Tulane, TCU, you name it. So here's all these, here's his defense in total for the year. Looking at every play run against him. Now, I'm a defensive coordinator in this case. Color, again, indicates how good offenses are. So if I'm a defensive coordinator, I want to see orange and red because that means offenses are not working, they're struggling against me. We see too much green and blue in here, which means that this defense wasn't performing as well as it should be. Okay. Now, but we can start to dig down into this and understand where am I making mistakes, where am I struggling. If I'm looking at, let's look at my defense against 11 personnel. I can click on 11 personnel, and just that quickly it'll bring up information about calls that I made. Maybe I want to go to a certain situation. Let's say first down plays from 11 personnel. I'm looking at my own defense here, and I'm looking at here's coverages that I called. Cover 3 and cover 4. Cover 4 especially was just not a good call here at all. Defenses abused it. But 42 roll, Fox, fire, these were coverages that in this situation I was really good. Offenses struggled when I gave them that look. I can start to see that very quickly and understand what is or isn't working. I can start to see that, man, I was great against trips closed, but when they were in Dallas, I got worked. And I can maybe click on that and see if I can find out why. Is there a reason why in that situation Dallas formations worked me? I was in a bench front almost every time, and they just abused it. But a dashboard, again, makes it visual, lets me see it. We'll do another step out. Let me show you an opponent scout here for a second, because they work in the same way. This is back to Penn State. This is UConn. Let's go to, let me bring up this one. This is that set where I mentioned Penn State was looking at their offensive self-scout a second ago. This is Penn State's offensive staff now looking at an opposing defense. So they were getting ready to play a game against UMass, and they're looking at UMass's defense now. So as an offensive coordinator, I'm saying now, if I'm an offensive coordinator and I'm looking at a visualization of an opponent's defense, I'm looking for blue boxes now, because that tells me those are cases where, boy, this defense could not stop these looks. Okay, this is where I say again, this is why it's hugely important. One of the topics we brought up a while ago was put both sides of the ball in your breakdowns, because if I'm an offensive coordinator, okay, my tendency is I want to break down the defense. I care about what fronts, coverages, stunts, blitzes he's showing. Okay. Now this offensive staff does care about that, and they have it. You see it right down here: front, coverage, blitz, stunt. They got all the stuff you'd expect them to see. But even more powerful than that, I think, in certain cases, is what were offenses doing against this defense, and they have that in here too. They have personnel, formations, schemes. What were offenses doing against that defense? The power of that in a visualization is kind of intuitive here, is that I can see I'm looking for blue boxes. That means this defense stinks against unbalanced formations. Why I say that? Because they have a blue box, they give up 6.5 yards of play, 60% of the plays run from unbalanced formations succeed against this defense. It stands out. If I'm an offensive coordinator, I can control that. I can run from an unbalanced formation if I want to. I can see he can't handle it. And I can go deeper and deeper and deeper. So take quick, we're about out of time. We'll wrap up here in just a second. Look at the personnel setting here. This defense is actually pretty good against 11 and 10 personnel. Even though in total they're not very good, pretty good against 11 personnel. I say that only because of the color of the box. Okay? If I'm going to explore that, I'm playing this defense. I click on 11 personnel. I'm looking at this defense against 11 personnel. Look down here, you see play type. It's got pass and run. So from 11 personnel, offenses against this defense were pretty much 65% of the time throwing, 35% running. Look at the big red box for running. That means is, I said, hey, this defense, they're really good against the run when teams are in 11 personnel. They're not very good against the pass, but they're pretty good against the run in 11 personnel. Now, if I'm an offensive coordinator and I want to run against them from 11 personnel, I need to know, first of all, they're pretty good stopping it. Even though they're not a great defense, they're good here. If I wanted to, I could go deeper and click on running plays. When I do that, so now I'm looking at here's UMass's defense. Here's every running play against them from 11 personnel. Okay, they're pretty good, but I can start to see a few things. I can say, okay, well, if I'm going to do it, I'd like to run from trips, because when teams are in trips, they have success. And inside zone running plays, we're successful against them. Inside zone read plays, we're successful. These types weren't. But I can see it. I can see how to attack him. I can see, even though he's good, he can be had, and he can be had here and here. And it's the power of a visual representation of data that lets you very quickly move through data, understand, diagnose a team, and map a course to take advantage of his every weakness, to look at my own data, my own self-scout data, and clearly identify where I'm broken, what's working, what's not, and make corrective action. But the power is it's all buried in your data. The key is setting your data up correctly, and then attaching a tool to it that can make it visual, that can let you see it, and move through your data in that way. Just to wrap up, what I'll do here is when we're done, I'll send you guys these slides so you have them. You can go back and see them again. We have this same session and other sessions that are recorded on our site. You can go back and look through different parts of them again if you want to. I'll send you the information how you can get to that as well. We do throw this out there to you too. If you guys have some of your data and you want to see what it looks like in the dashboard, maybe you got last year's self-scout or an opponent you care about you're looking at, or some data from your spring ball, whatever it might be, you're more than welcome to send us some data. No charge at all. We'll spin it up into a dashboard, send it back to you. You guys can go play around with it, see what you think, see how your data looks and feels in a dashboard. So to do that, it's really pretty simple. You just dump your data out of your film system to an Excel file, submit it to us. We're off season right now, so give us 24 hours, we'll have it back to you. In season turns even quicker than that. But feel free to send us some data. We're happy to spin it up into one of these to take a look at. We're back at, we do a couple of these other sessions, as I mentioned, throughout the week. We have another one Wednesday. Wednesday's focus is very specifically on the predictive power of the data. What we're going to talk about on Wednesday, if you're able to be there, is we look at something called, well, we talk about high probability tendencies very specifically. What we're going to show you there is that in your film data, there are, I say this with a high degree of confidence from what we've worked with these guys in the past, there are literally hundreds of tendencies in your data that are probably 80, 90% all over the place in your data. You probably see little to none of them ever in a typical film system report. There's a reason why. We're going to get into what that reason is and how you can circumvent that reason and how you can flush everything out. And we'll show you how you can take a typical set of film data and find 100 tendencies that tell you, hey, 85% he's running into this gap in this situation. We'll show you how to get there with data. It has to do with a little bit of math, not a lot of math, a little bit. And we'll show you a technique that explodes all those and help you find all those. And then Friday we do a session that's kind of, I think, a real powerful session. It shows you how you can take self-scout data and opponent scout data, and you can, in fact, click them together. And when you do that, your data can tell you specific play calls that would give a strength for you on a weakness for your opponent. And it can show you automatically where those calls are and how to take advantage of those. So we'll get into that. That gets into how we optimize play calling. That's the topic for Friday. So I'll shoot you, if you haven't registered for those, feel free to do that. I appreciate you guys taking time. I'll send you these slides again. I'll send you the information on where to find a recording of it if you like. If you have any questions, by all means, I'll stick around. Feel free to pop them up there in the chat bar. Otherwise, I hope to see you on Wednesday. If you have questions, hit me anytime. Thanks for taking time, guys. Look forward to talking to you again soon.